I'm sure you will agree that we got three very diverse, three really kind of thought-provoking and three very different perspectives on how we're approaching pure accountability, our thoughts about pure accountability, etc. I think I'll kick off with one question before I open it out to everybody, and that is, one of the dangers is that pure accountability means different things to different people. And I guess what I'd like to really know is, if you had to give me one thing, one principle at the heart of pure accountability, what would it be? So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick on you. I'm going to ask someone. I'm just going to go left to right. So, that's my left to right. I'm going to go right to left. Sam, let's start with you. I'm really interested in, we've all had different definitions of it. It means different things to us. What's the one thing that's really crucially important to you?
I think for me, the key thing in it kind of transcends whatever part of whatever system you're in or whatever part of society you're in really is, and I said it when I was telling a minute ago, which is, for me, it's about how we build trust with people who don't owe us that trust. Because I think whether you look at what's going on in the country, what's going on in our schools, all of the different measures and expectations, you know, we're really comfortable working in what we call VUCA, aren't we? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in our worlds. But you know, we forget that that's going on for everybody else as well. And so I think that really thinking about how we can build credible, I mean, I've got much better at listening, I would say, in the last 10 years, and listening, losing some of those defensive mechanisms that you often have because you are in a system that is measured, enabling us to really listen and deliver whatever your version of it is, accountability to the people that are in your community is the key thing, and that trust is at the heart of that.
Brilliant, brilliant. John?
I think I loved hearing what you're doing. I thought it was profound work, actually, and it made me think that actually, for me, the core of this is like there's a version of accountability that's basically about control and punishment, and comes from a place that there is a right thing to do and the wrong people need to be told off. That we all know, I was about to swear again and then Steve could tell me off, but we all know isn't right. And you guys, in education environments, it's obviously not right. We've known for years that doesn't really help. And there's a version of accountability which is about learning. And you talk to this so clearly, like, how are we, the process of learning to do what we're doing better. I talk to this thing about, like, if we know that the old ways don't work and we know that there isn't a clear template for a new way, we have to learn together how to do it. But the version of accountability that is dominant in our mindset today, which I think comes from subject and consumer story, Sam called out the consumer story, I think, and like, is one that is about, are they doing it right? And that is fundamentally broken, I think. And I think we have to be really clear on the distinction between those things. And I do worry about where Michael started us today with the idea that pure accountability is like on top of. I think Jonny's right. I think they are fundamentally opposed, and I think being honest about that is really important. Like, control and learning don't sort of sit neatly together. They are opposed, I would say. And I think pure accountability is actually about learning and not about control.
Which came very strongly what you said about listening organisations. Jonny?
I do quite a bit of work with the Centre for Young Lives, and we stopped talking about inclusive schools about a year ago and started talking about schools and trusts in the heart of inclusive communities, which I think is probably where most of us see what we want our schools and trusts to be. And I think a pure accountability approach, as John said, that's what is going to help us to identify what it is that we need to get better at and give us a decent insight so that we can develop the tools and solutions to make things better. The external accountability system right now doesn't do that. When I reflect on 5 years as a head, 8 years as a CEO, multiple Ofsteds, league tables, you know, that were published and whatever version of the IDSR or whatever it's called now, I can't think of a single thing in a league table or an Ofsted report that led us to get better. Not one thing. And I don't mean that there weren't loads of things that we needed to do to get better, because we did, because we were imperfect, and all organisations are. But it never came from, we never looked at the published compare and whatever it is, whatever they call it now, compare and humiliate schools, whatever the website's called. Not one thing on there where we looked at it and went, oh, we didn't know that, and that's really helped us. And we've all sat in Ofsted feedback meetings, and if you want a perfect illustration of the whole Ofsted reporting thing being flawed, is how often an inspector would say, I'm going to tell you something now, but it's not going to make it into the report. Why the hell is that not going to make it into the report? So pure accountability is a tool and approach that will allow us to do better for our communities. Top-down accountability in its current form absolutely doesn't do that.
Can I just, sorry, I feel like I'm playing really bad guest. But like, I am kind of going, are you actually going to do this? Like, so you talked about, and part of the whole citizen story is collective agency, collective voice, right? Like, you guys, if you all signed an open letter saying, like, this isn't helping us, this whole accountability system is going the wrong direction, you've got collective agency in a way that you haven't as individuals. Are you going to do it? Like,
it has been going on. A lot of people have been doing it for some time. At the moment, it's largely ignored. I think the current government, I said this last night, and I'd have to get my notes back, Steve, to remember what I said. But the current government has an instinct, I think, that we need to collaborate across communities, across trusts, engaging with health, with all of those other services, in order to solve the complex problems that we face. But it doesn't either have the will to pull the levers to do it and be really brave. In the white paper on page 22, I'm obsessed with three sentences on page 22. I wrote a Substack about it if you want to read it, where it talks about moving towards a new system of collective accountability for shared outcomes for young people across communities. And it mentions health, and it mentions justice, and it mentions schools. We should grab that now. Because Whitehall and Westminster ain't going to design that. They don't have a clue how to do that. We need to get hold of that. And in communities, in regions, wherever it might be, there's no reason at all why we can't build that and go, look, we've done it. Would you like it?
Sam.
But it is about being the change that you want to see, isn't it? And I think you've done that really well, Jonny, in your trust. And that's what we're trying to do really well as well. And I think that was this wonderful poem, I can't remember who wrote it, and it's about the dot between the dash that is read at many funerals. And I think that's what coming to events like this just reminds us, really, actually, that individually and collectively, we can be that difference and we can make that difference. And in all of our communities, we're all doing that in different ways already. We are very participatory, we are very consultative in our approaches, and there are lots of ways of engaging people that are coming through in very innovative ways in schools that are making a difference and that are making connections and keeping people involved. So I think for us, it's also very much about saying that, we don't speak with one voice, do we? And that's one of the issues in schools. How many years have we said, in the more recent past about, the issues with Ofsted, and you only have to go onto LinkedIn 50 times a day to see people with 6-foot letters saying we're strong. How is that helping us as a sector challenge regulations if there are some of us that are actually celebrating they got one strong amongst, various different judgments and things. And I think it's a real issue for us as a sector that actually the only way we are going to make a difference is if we all individually, personally abide by the values and the behaviours that matter to us, because
when talking
our
about that
sphere of influence is significant.
That's what I was going to say, sphere of influence.
Yeah.
One of the principles that I think emerged in one of our symposiums here is the notion of your point about what levers do we have and kind of what mechanisms do we have. The idea of intriguing upwards. that actually if you make it work as a system and you have that kind of demonstrably kind of delivering of your 3 lines in a way that happens across the whole network, then intriguing upwards is how you start to influence, isn't it? And I think it's how you make it work in practice to influence that we've got to get better at.
So I'm a bit wary of that. Because, and sorry, Sam, I don't get the feeling you're a man who...
I haven't forgot you.
I'm sure we're going to hear from...
I'm coming to you, I haven't forgot you.
Okay, I don't feel too worried about keeping Sam quiet, I don't. but like, so I'll take you back to the GovZero example that I started my whole thing with, right? Like, what they did was they built a parallel thing to show how it should be done. Audrey Tung, in the interview I hosted with her, talks about the power of demonstration over protest, actually, she says. She's like, when you protest, when you complain about something, you leave the locus of power where it is. When you build what it should look like, you create an alternative locus of power. I think what Jonny's speaking to is like, what if this community thought more like GovZero and like actually this pure accountability thing became an alternative system of accountability.
I'm not sure we're arguing different things there, to be honest, but I think... Yeah.
Well, but that's different to Intriguing Upwards, because Intriguing Upwards is about what you do as individual. Like, that's what, like, this is Intriguing Upwards already. Mm. But that's not coming together, forming an actual sort of full proposal for how an accountability system could work, and then saying, adopt this, we're going to start working with it as a community. Like, just build it. Like, everything's falling apart, my friends.
That's why I started with the question of what does pure accountability mean to you? And you asked this question, didn't you? Because it means so many different things to all of us. So Sam, you start now.
Yeah, if I go down a kind of a sporting analogy then, and a totally different kind of tack, I guess, here, but in terms of trying to get fit, something people try and do at the start of any new calendar year as a New Year's resolution. If you've got a personal trainer, you are very much like in a school sense, you're accountable to this one entity, and there's a play script that you have to go through in terms of what to eat and how to train. And the question around that in terms of just routine accountability is, how sustainable is that? Because once that you stop paying for that coach, those sessions, have you got the motivation for that to be self-fulfilling, self-sustaining, and you haven't got someone kind of breathing down your neck? And to my mind, that might give you the bedrock or a foundation to build upon, in the same way that some of the crude metrics we have give us a foundation to think about accountability. But I would argue that pure accountability are the standards that we hold ourselves to. And if I take that fitness analogy, if I want to become really fit, how do then I interconnect with somebody else so that Jonny and I can work out together, and then with John, and then with Sam, so it becomes a community endeavour that we're doing it together as a group, rather than me having to do it in a solitary kind of manner. And I see that being very similar in schools. How do we interconnect with our communities to create that greater level of accountability, both to ourselves, to the standards that we have, and to the standards and values that our communities have? And that has nothing to do with the crude metrics that we've obviously referenced as well.
I think just before I open it out, I think one thing that I think you three are a perfect example of is holding that tension of kind of the formal accountability measures that we've got, but doing what you believe in. Because you've each done that in different ways, admittedly, and that's where part of the issue might well be, but you've each done that significantly in a way which you've held that tension between, I'm going to be held accountable by this, but I'm doing this. How have you held that tension? What has it taken from you as leaders to hold that tension? Jonny.
I personally think it's an absolute belief that you can make a difference. Right. It's an absolute belief that, yes, you're operating within regulations and rules and things, but there's always space to innovate. There's always space to do things differently. I think Kate, in her presentation, said some nice things about, values and how they're shared and what drives, which comes first, really. But I think for us, I've personally always believed in the way I've approached leadership that there isn't any problem that isn't fixable. There isn't anything that we can't innovate or do better on. And also that I don't have all the answers to all of those things. And the only way that we will continue to grow as an organisation is if we're consultative, democratic to the extent that you can be, when you're sitting in the CEO's role and have all of those, wider responsibilities. But I think it is an absolute belief that there is always an opportunity to innovate and do things differently. And I think you have to really, I remember saying when I started in my career, and I've done this job for 15 years now, I used to talk to people who'd gone to 3 or 4 different organisations, being the chief exec of this and that and the other, and said, why is it that some people stay in one organisation and some people go to lots of different ones? And I realised that actually it's harder to stay in one place than keep going somewhere else and scratching the surface. But what it does is it gives you the opportunity to really live the organisation and to understand the people and to have the time to create that space. And I'd always said that if the day I feel I can't make a difference is the day that I have to leave. And I think constantly, every time there's a new white paper, you know, we're always thinking about where's the opportunity, not the opportunity to grow or to, you know, deliver another metric, but where's the space in which this is going to be really beneficial to our communities and how can we use it? And I think you just got to keep really animated and energetic and enthusiastic about finding those opportunities, because we know that every policy has, you know, intended and unintended consequences, and often the unintended ones are often quite discriminatory or, you know, unexpected. And you've got to really hold on to these fairness and equality factors because they disproportionately impact on your community. So that's what we're just constantly doing, finding those opportunities. And you have to believe, I think also Kate said about this victim mentality, too many of us think that we're just in this performativity agenda and that's our priority, and we flip that on its head and it's not. The important thing is delivering and ensuring that the people in our communities that matter have a voice and we can make a difference with them, not to them.
I'm really keen then, and I'm giving you two chance, but we'll come back to it. I'm really keen for you to have an opportunity to ask questions from any of our people who are assembled with us, because we've got a whole range.
Can I randomly suggest that we try and take some questions from non-white men? Because I feel like there's been a lot, and I obviously am a voice of that, like I feel like there's a lot of, sorry, I don't mean to be that, but
that's quite all right.
In the spirit of learning, like
That's
maybe we
all
can
right.
try and hear some other voices. Someone clapped, so you have to ask a question after that.
Yeah. Over there, can we get a mic over there? Yeah, I can't see the lights. Okay.
Sorry.
I'll go here and then there, okay?
I'm not sure if mine's a question. It's just an observation. I think it's been really inspirational today. We've heard from some amazing people with some real insights. I just want to go back to what John said, that there's an opportunity here. We're all in this room together, and I could see John's frustration in his body language in terms of we can make a move. We can make a move together, and that's why you keep coming back, John. When you started, I see people nodding their heads in the room. There's an opportunity with everybody in the room to actually do something, to build that model that Jonny talked about. I don't know, I'm feeling that sense of frustration with the way things are in society, that lack of hope. But I've gained a bit of hope today, and from some of the things that you guys have said. And I just think there is a real opportunity with all the people in this room to do something to change the narrative. But yeah, so that's something I've taken. It's not a question, it's just...
No, it's a great observation, thank you. And encouraging and hopeful. We've got someone over here, have we? Yep. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Yeah, the conversation's been really enlightening and very provocative. I'm sure everybody would agree. My thoughts are, where does this conversation go outside of this room? Where is the impact going to be felt with an education system that is around competition and inclusivity in terms of mats working within themselves and not outside of themselves? How do we leverage what you have so brilliantly valued today to ensure that there is a system that is still moving forward and that this conversation isn't, we don't need to have this conversation again this time next year or this time in 5 years' time?
That's an interesting one. How do we overcome how do we take it forward? And I think, to me, what underpins that, how do we overcome the barriers that exist? Because in some respects, there is a tension between your point, John, which was about you've got such agents here and you've got such ability to influence here, but actually, our system is not necessarily set up for us to collaborate together. It's set up for us to compete against each other in some ways. And so, to me, that's one of the obstacles that we have to come. How do we change the mentality behind, all different all different organisations, but working towards one purpose?
If I may, if this chap feels the way he does, he should, and I don't mean, you already got my spirit, right? So I'm just leveling with you. But it's like, if someone wants to start something, the spirit in this times is you're going to convene a meeting to start hacking what a pure Ofsted would look like. Who wants to go to his meeting? Just create the space for people to host some of those spaces. This is the nature of the time we're in. The things are falling apart. So
I understand that, and it's a time to step forward. I think Michael's question at the end is going to ask that very thing. Jonny?
Yeah, there's we all have choices as leaders, right? And I know I'm not a CEO anymore, but this is how I tried to live it for 8 years. So, number one, if anyone's still got Ofsted banners outside their schools, take them down. And then stop screenshotting dots and putting them on LinkedIn. I remember a few years ago, we just got sick and tired of the Hull Daily Mail on GCSE results day, publishing the information that we gave them and then ranking everyone. So I just got all the heads in the air. I was like, just on results day, when Hull Daily Mail ring, tell them stories about kids. Don't give them any data. And we did it. And it stopped the whole culture of, and nothing we could do once it got to October and it was all publicly published, but it started to change the culture. So get your neighbours together, get your mates together, people who you trust, and just go, we're not doing any of the trappings of competition anymore. We refuse. And then I think as that's a step where you could, because it's dead easy for us to beat ourselves up and go, what can we do? Well, take a small step. Do the small thing first. Do the things that sit within our gift, and then go from there. But I do think it's not anymore about Westminster and Whitehall and all the rest of it. Doing stuff at community level or regions level or whatever level it might be, there's a load of opportunities. And taking back control of the narrative. So I'm not listening. I'm from the north. I'm a Lancastrian. I've worked most of my life in Yorkshire. I'm just not listening anymore to anything about white working class northern boys that comes out of a Georgian townhouse in Hampstead. I'm bored of it. Take control of the narrative. We're working in those communities. We know the solutions. Let's get out there and let's say it publicly and loudly.
I think that's a great call to arms. I'm going to end the questions there, and I'm going to start by thanking each of you for bringing your very different perspectives to this. And I think there are some common themes which have emerged, which I'm going to try and pull together at the end. But can we show our appreciation for our great guests today? Thank you, guys.